It's Monday at 7 p.m. in South Africa, which means it's project live stream time with the Expedition Project. Send us a hello if you're out there to tell us where in the world or where in South Africa you're watching this from. If you're watching this on replay, thank you so much. Please feel free to send us a message in the comments. For those of you that are new to the Expedition Project, my name is Roger, founder of this project, which is now fast approaching its 10th year of driving change in conservation and community development. Through our annual sustainable expeditions and virtual tours, we aim to share success stories as well as define challenges, and with that open up collaborations and partnerships. There's really never been a time in history when the power of the media can be used independently and as powerfully as right now. This includes social causes and conservation causes, which have plenty of overlap. So please share, support, and synchronize our efforts. Back to tonight, though, we have a very relevant live stream for World Oceans Day. So I tell you what, if you've watched sharks on TV and on the Discovery Channel, then you've probably seen these guys in action. There's several shark hubs around South Africa, but three main great white shark locations, namely False Bay in Cape Town, Gansbaai close to Hermanus, and Mossel Bay on the border of the Garden Route. These East Coast shark zones have been highlighted by international film crews for years now, and for good reason. So penguins, seabirds, seals are all so much loved by the public, but sharks, and in particular great whites, have really had a bad reputation. And shark cage diving has also been publicized so negatively over the years. It's only when I actually managed to personally spend 250 days on the road in 2012 visiting projects focusing on land wildlife and marine wildlife that I began to fully understand the complexities of conservation, and in the case of tonight's talks, the complexities and vital importance of shark research. So back to tonight, though, and I'm really looking forward to discussing all things sharks and wildlife. So let's check it out.
Marine Dynamics Tourism Hub offers 5-star shark cage diving and whale-watching eco-tours in the unique Dyer Island ecosystem of Gansbaai, South Africa. The companies are Fair Trade Tourism certified and believe that your choice makes a difference. Through our environmental project, the Dyer Island Conservation Trust, we are making a real difference for conservation in the community by conducting effective science through daily observational data to translate into evidence-based conservation initiatives and legislation. Conservation projects for the survival of the African penguin, supporting community education, building effective tourism and conservation partnerships, fundraising towards research, conservation and education. Our key projects are African penguin conservation, which includes a nest project providing critical protection during the penguin fledgling stage, and in 2015 we opened a rehabilitation facility, the African Penguin and Seabird Sanctuary. Invaluable research on great white sharks by marine biologists includes tagging and tracking, behavioral surveys, wound healing, environmental parameter monitoring, and population studies. We support whale and dolphin research. We handle all marine animal rescue, strandings, and sampling on our coastline. Our environmental education program, known as DEEP, educates a dedicated group of young learners for 3 years, measuring the impact and growth of each individual. Marine pollution efforts include the unique fishing line bin project and monthly beach cleanups. The Dyer Island ecosystem is unique and fragile, and it is a priority of Marine Dynamics to ensure the marine life in the area flourish and remain for many years to come.
So with that, I'm thrilled to have Brenda from Marine Dynamics and the Dyer Island Conservation Trust join us tonight. Hey, Brenda, how's it going?
Roger, thank you so much. Just watching that video, I've been doing this for 10 years, so as long as when you came to South Africa, but watching it, I still feel so proud of all that our team is doing, and seeing our team members out there in the field is really, really special.
I know it's been such a long time since I managed to actually visit you guys personally, but hopefully not long until I can be back in your area again. Just a quick reminder to all of those of you watching, you can post your questions for us to answer. Don't worry if we don't answer your questions immediately. We want to give Brenda a chance to talk with us and give us sort of an overview for about sort of 15 minutes or so, see how we go. And then we're going to follow it up with an open discussion and take it from there. So Brenda, how are you going to kick us off tonight?
Okay, so it was really nice to see the visuals there, because obviously that's always so exciting. So what I am going to do is do a bit of a presentation Just going to take you through what we do. So we'll explain some of those projects a little bit more, a little bit more background. So yeah, type up your questions, anything you want to ask. Hopefully I will already answer some within the presentation time. Okay. So I'm going to, can I hit the share screen?
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay. So let's get started.
Okay, looking good on our side. We can see it. Looks great.
Okay, stunning. So yeah, we're really very excited to actually have this opportunity to talk about our projects. You'll see on here, we've got a little logo that says your choice makes a difference. And throughout this, I just want you to appreciate that should you be booking any trip in South Africa with whatever company, always make sure that they are actually protecting the area that they work in. And I'm going to show you tonight why that's just so critical. So where we are, for those of you who haven't been to South Africa, but you've probably heard of Cape Town, it's like the top city to visit in the world. We're actually just a couple of hours away. So it is really just a day trip, but where possible, if you can, stay longer in the area because there is so much to explore. And especially if you are a nature lover, this is a really pristine area. And literally you can visit throughout the year. There's always something in the marine world to see. We're very lucky that we have what we call the Marine Big Five. So we've got our sharks, our great white shark, who's recently been joined by another interesting shark called the bronze whaler. We have the whales. We have 3 whale species we're going to talk about, dolphins coming through the area, Cape fur seals, which are in abundance, and of course the endangered African penguin that you saw in the video. So we work around the Dyer Island ecosystem. You've probably seen it on Shark Week. Shark Alley is between Giza Rock and Dyer Island. So this is where the white shark population is to be found and where people can view it. So the shark cage diving, we've been doing this since 2005. So it's 15 years and it's been really interesting. I've been with the company for 10 years now and actually knowing what we've achieved over this time, how we've changed the way shark cage diving is viewed, the way we do business, and the way we are researching and protecting the great white sharks. So just to give you a little explanation for some of those questions that do come up with respect to shark cage diving. For a start, it is different in different parts of the world. So in South Africa, we work under strict permit conditions. There is no touching of white sharks. The white shark is a protected species. Of course, it's also a more difficult species to view. So it's not like a whale that you would see that pops up for air. So we do use a method called chumming. It's an unfortunate word because it has bad connotations of things that happened many years ago. Chum is just fish oil, and it literally just creates a scent that will attract a shark to come past your boat. But you literally have to position yourself where sharks are. And anybody who's been shark cage diving, and we've battled on a difficult day maybe, would understand that you're working with wildlife. It doesn't magically appear just because of fish oil in the water. They literally have to be there. And they have different behaviors. So in summer months, they would be in the shallows. In winter, when our young seal pups are learning to swim, they would be in the around the Dyer Island ecosystem. So we do tend to have to move depending on what the sharks are doing. So really what it is an underwater viewing experience because it is just something you would never be able to see elsewhere. The white sharks are migratory. They do not stay here. So we might see them for about a month at a time. And we've been seeing them for all this time. So we've documented a lot of, growth and maturity. Every single one is documented, as you'll learn as I talk about our studies further on in the presentation. But every single shark is documented with us through fin identification. So this is really critical. And the other thing, Roger alluded to the fact that there's only 3 areas in South Africa that you can see white sharks. It is the most accessible population in the world as well. So you can really, it's 20 minutes to the dive site and you have the ability to see a white shark. But the sad thing is we are the only monitoring in South Africa of white sharks. So we've also become their voice and they do face a huge amount of pressures. And as an industry, shark cage diving is really way up there in terms of driving the conservation around the species. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of stuff on the media around that. So we'll talk a little bit more about it as we go. We're also very lucky. If the sharks are slow, we've got the whales, we've got some dolphins coming through. You never know what you're going to see when you head out on an eco trip or even at whale watching season. because it really is a marine adventure. We do aim to show you the Marine Big Five, but of course we can never promise we are dealing with wildlife. But it's just incredible to be on sea and some really, really magic moments that happen. We are lucky that we can also do some pelagic encounters, not something we can do on a regular basis. We have to plan conditions accordingly, but we see some incredible species out there. Then just also back to the Your Choice Makes a Difference. We have been awarded various responsible tourism awards. And, you know, those things are great for our team, but most importantly, they're even better for marine species. At a lot of these responsible tourism awards that we're at, it's often the land species that are kind of really, really showcased. So it's really important to put, you know, white sharks, penguins on the map globally. So we've got the commercial part of the business, but then the owner of the company is Wilfred Chibble, had a strong passion for the little African penguin. And back in 2006, he had started a nest project. So he started fundraising, and that's when we opened the nonprofit. So it was primarily started with the African penguin, but it's become about so much more. And all the things that we can do in our area to protect. This is our motto here, is discover, protect, educate. So a lot of what we're doing is taking all that data, 15 years on marine dynamics, 20 years on Dyer and cruises, taking that data and actually making it count towards good science and science that can drive conservation legislation. So being able to submit the science to authorities to help change and better protect our species. And of course, education. We do education across the board, including this talk. The whales that we see, we're so blessed. We're about to go into southern right whale season. We start seeing whales anytime from June on, and every whale is documented. You'll see the southern right whales, they come through to our coastline to mate and to calve. You don't often see feeding. It's assumed they don't feed when they're here, but we do sometimes see feeding behavior, which is where you can actually see the whale on the left there. They have a very distinctive V blow. So if you're standing on the shore, you could see it with that fantastic V. This is the time they come. So anything from mid-June on, sometimes you see earlier, but those tend to be the southern rights that haven't actually made the migration back to the subantarctic islands, but maybe had been up our west coast. So generally now you'll start seeing them coming. In terms of best time, sure, any time September on is quite beautiful here, and because the flowers are just so stunning as well. But September, October is really nice because the calves start getting quite brave as well and moving away from mom and tail slapping and breaching. So there's some really nice behavior around that time. You will see on the right there, I just included these maps just to show you that everything we actually know, we cite our whales, we are actually documenting it, and this counts towards many, many studies. But the humpback whale is another one that we see even during southern right season, because they can be migrating up to the warmer waters of Durban, Mozambique. So they're heading up that way, and they also pass by here at June, sometimes July, August. So again, at different times of the year. And then again on the migration back, December, January, we've seen them in February, we've seen them with babies. There was a super pod up our west coast just recently. So again, this species is doing particularly well in terms of conservation. The southern rights are, there's an estimated 10,000 in the Southern Ocean, but the southern rights are at a 7% growth rate per annum. So they're doing quite well, but obviously none of the numbers are anything like they were pre-whaling days. So still a long way to go. Like I said, they're doing well in terms of pressures. Maybe some ship strikes, entanglements tend to be a problem. So there are things that can impact them. So again, education about where they are is critical. The Brodus whale is actually a fish feeder. So this is often following the big bait balls. You might see it with your big groups of dolphin. We do have some residents around. They tend to sit off the island. If you see our little dots there and where the island is, they will dive for about 20 minutes. So not always the easiest whale to watch, but they do give us some incredible displays as well. And some of our guests have seen beautiful lunge feeding from this species. So really, again, you just never know what you're going to see out there. As for the dolphins, we've got some bottlenose groups that come through. It's harder to predict the dolphins. And in fact, summer, we run eco tours when we're not in traditional southern right whale season. And we often see some really, really incredible dolphins coming through then. So please don't think if you're not in whale season that you shouldn't go out on a marine experience, because you might see a Brodus whale, you might see a migrating humpback, and you might see dolphins as well. So any day of the year is a good day to be on sea. Common dolphins, these we see in nice groups coming through, and they will also be, again, can't predict, but we have seen groups of up to, in the hundreds, literally. So this is quite an incredible species to watch as well. The humpback dolphin, one of my first sightings was of a humpback that we call opal. He's got a grey back. It means like your grandfather or old man in Afrikaans, opal. And so I was very excited to see him. The most I've ever seen together is 6, and I asked our marine biologist today, and she said the most she's ever seen together is 13. Sometimes they're solitary, they are in very, very small family groups, as mentioned, and they tend to hang around near the estuary, especially when the estuary is open. So the problem is that they face then by being so close to shore, of course, speeding, a lot of speedboats. Luckily, we don't have too much activity in our area, but that does put them under threat. There is only an estimated 500 of them. So it's quite rare, and we do fin ID studies with this species as well. And in fact, if you go onto the Dyer Cruises Facebook, you can see some of the recent ones we've seen, and they've got little stories about how often we've seen them. So if you want to check that out, that's really, really, really very special species. The Cape Fur seal is in great abundance. We have about an estimated 60,000 on Giza Rock alone. And it's sometimes if you go through Shark Alley, you really don't know where to look first because everyone attracts your attention. There's just so much activity in November. That's pup season, so the big males are there to come and mate. The pups have been born. It's huge activity. Unfortunately, there will be some deaths of those babies. It's a natural sort of progression as well, and they are really, really in abundance. The other problem with that is some of the males, actually the bulls, tend to hunt seabirds and African penguins, so they might take them just for their stomach contents. So that can be a problem in terms of balancing this ecosystem, but very, very special. And when those little pups are about 5-6 months, they'll start swimming around in April, and that's usually when the white sharks would hunt around that system. African penguins, Roger was going on about the white sharks, but this is my other favorite and another iconic species that people come to South Africa to see. They usually can go to the land-based colonies in Boulders and in Stony Point. But if you are here in Gansbaai, you can also visit our very special African penguin and seabird sanctuary to see this species. We have a population on Dyer Island. Unfortunately, the species went on the endangered list in 2010. It is under a biodiversity management plan. So we have everything we're doing in terms of conservation falls within that plan, and we work with many, many conservation partners to help turn around the possible extinction of the species. We have an estimated 13,300 breeding pairs left in South Africa. On Dyer Island, it used to be one of the biggest colonies. In the 70s, 25,000 breeding pairs. We're sitting at about 1,000 breeding pairs left. So unfortunately, numbers to sustain them is quite difficult, and to turn it around is not an easy task, but we certainly have to be very hopeful that we can do so. I just want to show you how that population is looking and why. We used to have millions. When they started documenting them in 1956, you can see the breeding pairs there, and we've had this continuous decline. Now, people say, but why? So just 2 historical factors that are of great importance. What we did is actually, as a human species, when I say we, the collective we, British and American ships actually scraped all the colonies around South Africa. Most of it was island dwellers. They scraped all those colonies of the bird guano or the bird droppings. And that was quite a soft substrate that was up to 4 or more meters high. And it was where the penguins used to burrow into, and they were protected from the elements and predators. And now, unfortunately, they're nesting on the surface, and it exposes them to many more dangers, especially things like the kelp gull, or if they're on a land-based colony, predators like caracal and leopard that can also affect them. So it's been really dramatic in taking that habitat away, and which is why we started the Nest project. Further to that, we actually at one point, when these guys were on the islands, they would eat a penguin or two. Penguin eggs started being harvested, and they were considered a delicacy. So if some older people in Gansbaai have probably tasted a penguin egg back in the day. Thankfully, that practice stopped in the 60s, but by then it was actually already too late. If you look at that little graph there, that's just one island. That's an island, in fact. It was over 500,000. And you can see by 1949 how those numbers had dropped. And that is really indicative of that accumulative effect of removing breeding. So the key thing for us in terms of rehabilitation is to actually return the breeders back to the population so they continually breed. It's not to keep them in captivity, it's to get them back out there to the breeding population. And that's why we started the Penguin Sanctuary. Historically, when I started in the trust, we didn't have the sanctuary. And we used to send our birds through to Sandcob in Cape Town, which is a great organization. But unfortunately, it was just a bit of a time delay. It can take up to 4 hours to get there. Sometimes the penguin came in late, has to wait overnight, and we weren't allowed to do any feeding or anything. Now we actually have a veterinary team out. We have a vet nurse on hand, and we have a vet that comes through weekly as well. Plus a team of experienced experts that are actually working in the sanctuary. And a couple of things they do there is take the penguin chicks at the end of the year that have been what we call abandoned. African penguins do a yearly molt. So when they lose their feathers, if they've bred late, they might not be able to feed their chick because for 3 weeks they stand and literally molt their feathers out. They have to replace them every year. So we do get penguins, especially at November, December. So that's often the time. December's quite busy with visitors for us as well. But we are able then to put those penguins back on the island. And that was critical for us, was to actually return them back to their breeding habitat, which was also when they went to Cape Town, they didn't always end up back on our island, which is probably why we've seen growth at the other colonies like Stony Point. So they come in for various reasons, disease. We've had bird flu a couple of years ago, which was quite dramatic. We have various wounds, arrested molt, lack of nutrition. We're battling with food at the moment in terms of sardines and anchovies out there. And again, it just depends on where they're hunting, but these guys are going quite far from their colonies for food. So we are seeing a lot of the penguins really suffering either starvation, underweight. It's affecting their long-term condition. So there are a lot of concerns. We have an 80% release rate, and we release either directly on the island, and especially chicks would always be released on the island, or we might release off Dyer and cruises, so you might see that one day if you're on the boat, or they might be released like here, that you can see once or twice a year we do a public release for education. And over 5 years, this is the big news, we got 462 penguins we've rescued. That's 18% of the Dyer Island breeding population, and that have a potential to contribute 329 chicks to the population in the next 5 years. So that is why we do this. It's important to rebuild this population. The penguin homes you saw in the video, and I've explained why we have that. This is our latest model, and the model we've been working on for quite some time, and we have a team doing this. It's with many more partners now, but you'll see it's got a double roof. It really helps with the heat, and it's also got a higher back than our previous model, which helps with the penguins inside there, the chicks, and also the heat that they themselves are generating. And then the sharks. So we have, of course, our great white sharks, and of course, they're facing many threats. Like I said, they are migratory. We are looking at things like wound healing. They have incredible wound healing abilities. They have, the population is a little bit unknown. We're a little bit concerned about the population. Our population study, we estimated maybe 800 to 1,000. Our actual number was a count of 532, but our biologists use an open population estimate. But then since then, we've seen some we've lost. We've also documented new. So right now, all the scientists actually pool their fin IDs to get a good South African population count. We've also had some changes in our ecosystem recently. So the shark on the right is a bronze whaler or a copper shark. You can see by that beautiful color. And they've also started visiting the vessels recently. So this is quite an interesting species, and they tend to be more in groups. They are about 3 meters. So very beautiful species to observe as well, and something that you would normally only see if you were a qualified diver doing the sardine run in South Africa, for example. So really, really great species. White sharks, people usually ask what's the highest, the greatest we've seen, the length. we see over 5 meters here. We see from anything 2 meters up to 5 meters. So we have our cage that you're in is about 4.5. So we use it as a great measuring. It helps us with our measuring, but we do see some really big sharks coming through here as well. So on the research side of things, we have a team working on tagging and tracking. It's our key project that Alison heads up, Alison Tana. For those of you in the UK, she's currently on work on the Wild Side, Channel 4, little clip there, but people are loving that, and you can see some of our work on that. So if you aren't tuning into that, you should check it out. And Alison is featuring on there. She is the key biologist, and she has been tagging and tracking sharks with the team since 2011 we started. So we used to manually track, so that put the team under a lot more pressure in terms of weather conditions and actual sea conditions. But now they actually have listening stations in the bay that help pick up all the tag sharks as well. And that's across South Africa. So we work with different scientists to get our different data and in turn give them the data we pick up with our listening stations. As I mentioned, that population study was done with FinIDs. We do have videos and papers one can read if you want to learn more about this. The tagging and tracking is done with the acoustic track there, and there's Alison manually tracking a shark one day, and we've seen some incredible stuff through this. Just wanted to show you some of the tracks that they saw in the early days. There you can see the system that the shallows there, where the sharks would spend time. And one of the interesting ones was a male shark that we called Zane that used to spend time in Shark Alley in the daytime, and at night would head far out. So that was quite interesting for the team as well. And they actually saw Zane predate in the channel as well. And just how far do sharks, that's the other question people want to know, is how far do sharks go? Where do they go? We learned a lot back in 2012 when OSearch did some satellite tagging here. And you can see the sharks went in various directions. We did see a lot of females heading up toward Mozambique waters. Again, facing a lot of pressures. In the first year, 2 died, one in the shark nets in KwaZulu-Natal, actually in a drumline, and another was killed by local fishermen in Mozambique. So they do face a lot of pressures on our shore as well. And they really are traveling quite some distance in often very short time. In 2004, Nicole was a shark that went to Australia and back in also a very short time. So also a great story. But we really, really are still learning a huge amount. Remember, no one has seen a white shark pup or mate. So that's still stuff that we haven't actually seen. Then, of course, a few years ago, everybody's seen this all over the press. We had some orca predation. Orca were not often seen here. Again, they move fast. They are moving around, but we didn't often see them in our area. And then in 2016, we had 6 weeks. We had seen an orca move through, but didn't pay too much thought to it. But we didn't see white sharks for 6 weeks. Come 2017, this happened. So this was a predation by orca, and they actually take out the liver. So they would probably put in a bit of tonic immobility, and that liver, they would rip that shark apart. Remember, an orca is about 9 meters in comparison to even, this was a 4.5 meter, this first one that washed up there. They could still overpower it. They work together. A shark is quite a solitary animal. The orca that were believed to be responsible are orca that have been seen on this coastline for some time, called port and starboard. And we're documenting currently where they go. They haven't been seen for a little while now. They were last seen in Hermanus. They've also since predated on a bronze whaler. And prior to the white sharks that washed up, they had predated on 7 gills, which they still do as well. Those white sharks washing up it was a world first for the team to actually see this kind of predation and document it on an actual shark. It's been seen in the Farallon Islands, so it has been documented. It's not a first in the world, but nobody has ever been able to actually necropsy a carcass. And so we do have footage on that as well on our YouTube channel. Academic publications, if the scientists are out there interested, anybody learning or studying for this, please go and read some of these. It's really, really interesting. And if you've got any questions, then we can direct them to the biologists, or maybe I can answer some of them. We've also put out a couple of infographics that help for some people that don't want to go and sift through a scientific article. We've got to make science more accessible to people. So that's quite a key thing for us as well. Our team is quite broad. We have various biologists. Remember, they're on the boats every single day. So any marine experience with them, you've got somebody that's really qualified that's involved in this work. So you would meet some really incredible people. Some of the other things we do just on the side and with our volunteers is baited remote underwater video, looking at the different species that move through here. All these things are important in terms of whether we can, push for marine protected areas, what the species diversity is. So these studies are long-term, and we're working with our partners as well on this. We've also started the Ocean Research Oceanographic, I got that confused, Research Institute. We do tag the smaller shark species as well. This is also run through our volunteer program. And again, this just looks at where they're breeding, size, etc., and mark recapture. So if they recapture, they can obviously get the measurements again. So also all critical studies that are being done around here. And then our estuary monitoring as well. We started doing this a couple of years ago. And that estuary that I mentioned is quite critical to the humpback dolphins, for example. We are, as partners here, we are measuring the salinity, oxygen, temperature. And that came out quite important recently when our estuary had in fact closed and got to probably the highest levels I've ever seen it in 10 years, was over 2 meters high. And we had to forcefully breach it open, not us, but the authorities. And our studies and our temperature monitoring and all that was really, really critical to helping make those decisions. So really, really important part of the ecosystem as well. We also document all the birds we see here as well, and again, in relation to the parameters that they are monitoring. So quite interesting. Animal strandings, whatever washes up here, sad as it may be, we do take the opportunity to take scientific sampling. So we'll pass that on to any scientists who are doing any studies. But yeah, it is quite a thing here. And luckily, all the eyes and ears out there of the public will alert us to anything unusual. We also have an environmental education program run by Pinky, our educator, and we work with a group for 3 years at a time. And in fact, we've been doing this for 5 years now. So our first 2 groups have graduated are in our local high school, and our local high school has a marine sciences program. So that has also benefiting us because we can continue the story with this group of children. But really, really important, and they get exposed to everything that we're doing. So we do various lessons with them and have different education manuals. In fact, Pinky's about to launch an online education. If you didn't see a video earlier today, we do have it up as well. We've been doing beach cleanups, marine pollution. I'm very passionate about this topic, and we've been doing cleanups for many, many years. And in fact, we were doing a lot of clean marine efforts long before it became a thing. So yeah, we've been on this for a long time. In 2010, together with our Australian municipality, we put up our first 20 bins in the area. And this program has grown along the South African coastline with a few hundred bins up now. And all of them are GPS mapped on the website, on the Trust website. And we've even rescued a shark from fishing lines. So it's not just the seabirds or the smaller shark species that you see entangled. But this project is really, really working in South Africa. So doing really well on that. This we started last year. And of course, it's rainy season. It was rainy season last year, June, and it's just started again. And this has been very interesting. Project Storm, we saw this neat idea in Australia, and we just started it. And again, with our partners, the municipality. And this is just one drain coming from the center of our town. And I mean, look at that. And that's one hall. We counted now, if you see the stats on the side, 17 collections that we've analyzed. Cigarette filters, huge. People think when they pop that cigarette filter down that drain, it doesn't go anywhere. It does. When these storm drains were created, marine pollution it was for water runoff. But of course, our pollution, which is again a human problem, has just really, really ballooned out of control. And phase 2 of this is we've actually done some education around the drains. So throughout our town now, at the moment in Gansbaai, you will see, don't litter, the sea starts here. Unfortunately, I've still seen such bad human behavior, even now, where there's a lot more trash accumulating on our roads, and people just seem to think it doesn't go somewhere, but unfortunately it does. And we've seen the impacts on the marine animals. We've had a penguin that had a small piece of cellophane inside. And as much as we don't want to pick up litter, I would rather pick it up, even because if I know I'm going to save an animal by doing so, I'm going to do it. So this is a really, it's really, really key, and we're going to monitor again this year, and we'll see what we come up with. We also do some nicer projects with our elderly community, where they're making our lovely newspaper bags and we use this in our shops as well. And they earn money on that. Just some trash art I've put here as well, just to show some of the displays we use around marine pollution. And that on the left, that necklace is actually a lady who was trying to use fishing line, which is really, really hard. It's not easy to do anything with it unless you've got bulk. So for the most part, you can only recycle it into mower line. And she was actually making some jewelry out of it, which is pretty cool. So yeah, we're always looking at opportunities of what we can do. But yeah, marine pollution, really big thing. And that's where also the people watching this can help make a difference. Just if you ever want to experience it, we do volunteer and intern programs. There are paying programs, and you will get exposed to all of this. Our intern program is a 4-week skills-based program where you would actually learn to work with different equipment. And anybody can volunteer, anybody's interested in this marine world. And it really is an incredible experience to work here. So on that note, I'm ending with my favorite quote here: "The ocean stirs the heart, inspires the imagination, and brings eternal joy to the soul." So I just hope that some of that tonight has inspired some of you to maybe think of what you can do, feel inspired to come and visit this incredible area, and feel inspired to do something for conservation. So thank you, Roger, for that opportunity.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Brenda. A lot of questions coming through, and I've got lots too. But before we get to that, I'm just going to do a quick show of what we got coming up next Monday. So we can take a little 30-second break just to check that out, and then we're going to be back with some questions.
At our very first lesson in July 2009, we had 12 kids and 12 dogs arrive. Within 6 weeks, it had grown to 60. And that's when we realized that we were onto something. And today we average 80 to 100 children every Friday afternoon. Over the course of a year, we probably are seeing about 270 kids into the program.
So that's coming up next Monday, some time with Funda Ninja. But for now, we're with Brenda from Marine Dynamics and Dyer Island Conservation Trust. Brenda, it's funny, I was thinking when I was listening to your presentation that I think a lot of people had goals for lockdown to try and educate themselves or learn something more. And I tell you what, anyone watching that, even if they've got a passion about, ocean conservation or marine wildlife and everything, it is definitely someone could have learned something from that, no matter how much knowledge you have. It was a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's quite weird, on this thing, I'm not seeing you, so I felt like I was talking to myself for a while. But I'm really glad to see you. I just had a squiz over the questions now as well. So yeah, really glad to see that.
No, it's amazing. And I think the big thing that's been on my mind, and I think when I first met you guys in 2012 and then again in 2013, I think that the thing that kept coming up in my mind, and there was a question that came through about it. Let me see if I can find it now. So the sort of conception around shark cage diving, has been around for a while now. So what's your kind of view on the impact that your interactions are with sharks and that general perception around it? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and I saw it's always interesting because I saw a surfer also commented about that, and it's really important for surfers, for anybody using the ocean, to understand that shark cage diving didn't make the sharks there. The sharks are there. In fact, even if you're in areas where you don't see shark cage diving, the sharks are around. So I think what is allowed in terms of South African permitted conditions is we're allowed to work around seal colonies. So, for example, in False Bay, because there is quite a lot of bathing and surfing happening in that area, they only operate in the winter months when they work around an island system because the sharks are there. Mm-hmm. And yes, we know post-orca predation and a few other things are happening. They haven't seen white sharks properly for a while. Now we've been battling with sightings a bit. It's erratic. So Just to explain, that's exactly, it's really, really hard. But we work around, obviously, Giza Rock System and then same in Mossel Bay. So you work around a seal colony. There's only a limited number of operators, and that, again, is based on the permit conditions. And we've recently gone through a permit process. So, again, we only have the same amount of operators that actually work there. In Gansbaai, we don't have as many people using the water in terms of surfing, swimming. I mean, obviously, Cape waters are pretty cold as well. So we don't have nearly as many people in the water, although we have quite a few guys here that bodyboard and all that. So there is activity. But my favorite, let me just put this in context. My favorite memory is with Alison Tana, our biologist, and it was quite some years ago. And she was busy doing her skipper's license, and we were out on our research boat. And we were just in the shallows on a perfect day. There were no other boats out there. It was late afternoon, I think. We were surrounded by 7 sharks, literally in the shallows. We're talking a couple of meters from the beach. They investigate the boat. They are curious anyway, but we weren't there. They don't come because we're there. We go there because they're there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, it's not an easy species to view. So even if, remember, there's a natural chum slick that comes off that seal colony. Anybody who lives here or anybody who's been in Shark Alley will tell you how it smells, will tell you why the sharks would investigate that. The sharks are we see a lot of males when it's time for the small pups to swim. So we do tend to see like a Zane that we told you about earlier. So they have very distinctive behavior, the white sharks. And so we literally move and operate within what those white sharks do. That's pretty much it. And because, remember, we've been studying them for 15 years now, we've seen that growth, that maturity of returning individuals. And we also just recently on Marine Dynamics shared some of our favorite iconic sharks. If you have a look on the Facebook there, we've talked about Slashfin and I think Rosie and a few of the others. Remember, we've been working with these sharks for many, many years, but they do not stay in the area. So we really don't control their movements. We don't have that much impact long-term on them. If anything, there would be some energy expenditure for sure around the boat, but they don't stay long around the boat either. And sometimes we even find we don't see sharks, but they've pinged in at the receiver. So they are in the area. They don't even visit the boat. So it's not easy, actually, to do shark cage diving. So I don't know if that answers for the surfers, but we really, we've done talks to swimmers as well, long-distance swimmers that also have these concerns. We really have no impact on them appearing in our area or not appearing in our area. They are moving along this coastline. And, we've lost probably 1,000 or more for various reasons. So I think, to think of the nets and things like that I talked about earlier where there are losses, we probably don't even have the shark numbers. I mean, the white shark is really at a critical place at this point. It really, really is. So can only hope that...
Have there been any sort of stats done on shark cage diving, the immediate area around shark cage diving and shark attacks? Has anyone ever done anything like that to actually validate any of these misconceptions? You know what I mean?
I think we could probably talk about Gansbaai as an area because we don't have... we had, like, for example, we don't work around the corner in Walker Bay. We literally, shark cage diving literally has like a triangle worth of, we can operate here and that's it. We can't just go around the corner because we're having a bad day. We can't go into Walker Bay. You literally only have a very small place to work. And quite a few years ago, there was probably the only incident I can actually think of was a surfer in Walker Bay, so off DuPont area, where he was bitten, his board was bitten in his leg. He was fine. It didn't do any major damage, thankfully. But they are literally right there. I've been sitting in a coffee shop overlooking De Kelders, and we've seen a white shark breach. We don't work that area. They are there. They're on the coastline. That is their natural behavior. And I think we really have to respect that it's their territory, So, they're there. But, yeah, we don't have many situations here in Gansbaai. I don't want to talk about poachers because they're out there illegally and doing things at night.
A whole different story, exactly. Is there any difference between Gansbaai, Mossel Bay, and False Bay? In the numbers and in the what's going on there?
Okay, so bearing in mind, I'm not a biologist. Here's my disclaimer, but
Don't worry, won't quote you on it.
I have the absolute privilege to work with an incredible team.
Yeah.
So I've learned a lot from them, and I do read their papers. So what I do understand in terms of like what we've documented in terms of population for Gansbaai is not necessarily the same sharks as seeing in False Bay. They talk about a possible 20% overlap. So that's actually quite important, and which is why we critically need the South African study. So there is one person now looking at all those fin IDs of all the regions, because that's also important. If that overlap is not as big. And again, before they did, and that satellite tagging is obviously more intrusive. But before we did that, all we would know is we saw a certain shark in Mossel Bay, and the team saw it in Gansbaai maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Meantime, when we've done the satellite tagging, because our team was involved, we've seen that shark's already gone to Mozambique, come back through Mossel Bay, and then come to us. So their range and their distances they're traveling, and sometimes that short space of time is really incredible. And we wouldn't have known that without the satellite tagging. So we learned a huge amount from that as well. There were 38 sharks that were ultimately tagged. So that was also critical in understanding that. And you saw those on that map that I showed you. They go off the continental shelf. Some go up the west coast. They really don't seem to have a particular, we go this way or that way. So very, very, very interesting, and still so much to learn. But really, really critical. We number-wise, it's of concern.
Yeah. Just a big shout out and thank you to everyone who is watching and posting questions. We're going to sort of chat for probably about 10 minutes more. So just thank you so much. Keep posting some questions. Thank you to Mark here for just saying hello, to Howard, to Tanya, to Antoinette, to Angelique, to Kathleen. Thank you so much, everyone. Really do appreciate it. Send in your questions if you got it. And here's one for you, Brenda. So Jen says that obviously limited when anyone can travel at the moment, but which month out of April, August would be the best to come see great whites?
Ooh. Okay, so this is a question that always comes up. I have to answer this one. Thank you for all the lovely comments, people. And Tanya, thanks so much. And I can't answer that question about Reunion Island. That'll have to get the biologist to do. So white sharks, we actually can see them year round. Okay, so there's pros and cons to any of the seasons, for example. So like I said, summer months, they mostly spend in the shallows. And in fact, the last 3 years, post the orca predation, there doesn't seem to have been settling into any particular pattern. So it's become more difficult. We've had some incredible months last year. But in terms of also their hunting around the island, that also seems to have changed. So absolutely difficult. I can tell you that historically, for example, the supposed summer months where people used to say, oh, you must go in winter. The reason for that was more to do with visibility. So in the summer months, we do have a lot more algae bloom in the water, and that can affect your visibility. Having said that, the visibility can be difficult also in winter. If you ask me in August, I know some Augusts have been terrible because of winter storms, but yes, the visibility is good. So it's really hard. April, again, it's going to be a lot, the earlier months are also beautiful to be on sea because you can enjoy the sun and, be in a bikini. Winter months are cold, but the activity is brilliant. The water is actually warmer in winter. So you've got colder waters actually in summer, a bit of visibility issues. And then winter is really cold. We don't worry. We have a beautiful fireplace and everything when you come back. And a hot soup to get you sorted out. So it's an adventure anyway. But we do tend to have those winter storms. So if you are planning a trip, advice is, number one, plan more than one day. Don't leave it to the last minute. Don't leave it to the day you're flying out because, you might be on sea and then you're going to miss your flight. Please don't do that. But do allow a few days, especially if you are looking at winter then, because we might have to move you. Remember, literally as well, it's not an easy task. We work with weather, sea conditions, tide. There's various factors that are going to affect your trip. So do allow a few days that you could potentially take that trip. But frankly, any day is a good day. And even, February, I just remember 2010, 2011, we saw something like 22 white sharks around the boat. That was, again, it was unheard of. So you really never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So any day.
the amazing thing about Hunt By and that area is, if someone has come out to come see some great whites, and it's not going to happen on that particular day. I mean, you're close to Hermanus, you're close to De Kelders. There's a lot of nice things to kind of see in the area, and it's such a beautiful part of South Africa. For those of you that want to sort of plan a trip, that haven't done anything like this before, we've got a new feature on the Expedition Project website, which we're playing around with, which is a lot of fun. You can actually select several different projects, several different accommodation establishments, which we've linked up, which participate in their communities and really give back to conservation as well. You can select all of these, and it'll actually map out a trip for you, which is really nice. So it's a fun feature to play around with on our site. So you can select something like Marine Dynamics or Dyer and Conservation Trust, and then select some other projects as well, not necessarily marine projects, but then combine them all together, which makes it a lot of fun and quite an addictive little tool that we're playing around with. Really nice. Okay, let's see what else we got. Tasha says hello. Liesel says sharks are amazing. Indeed they are. And Peter says hello from Durban, another big shark hotspot, Durban, of course.
That would be my brother. Shout out to my brother.
So I think the last thing I sort of want to ask about sharks before we sort of get onto maybe just a couple of the other things, in particular sort of plastic, I'm quite interested in speaking about. Let me just see if I can find the question. So if someone wants to come out and do and work with you guys, you mentioned the volunteer project and everything. Is there something that someone who's in particular studying veterinary work and marine work and stuff like that, along that kind of zoology, along the marine conservation and side of things, that it's quite a practical experience for them?
Yes, absolutely. So like I said, just to explain this project a bit better, the volunteers, anyone can do it. You would work a lot on the ecotourism boat, so you would see sharks every day. You would work with the conservation projects. With respect to that and practicals, so our academy is now doing that 4-week scientific internship where you would literally go out and do BRUV work. You would do the ORI tagging. You would do the estuary monitoring. You would do the white shark, obviously how to monitor that. You would work with data. You would be doing things at a slightly different level. So we do encourage a person to rather do that, especially if they're studying. Then in terms of, say, that practicals, or if you're looking for project placements, we can do it. It is upon discussion. And so we've done various studies, especially on the baited remote underwater studies with some of our students. So it is on discussion. If we already have a student working on certain data, obviously we would continue with that. We might not share that data. So it would really just depend. And we can sort of work and create a project around that. And so, yeah, you would need to spend a little bit longer here, but we are in discussions with various students on that. So it is a possibility. It would just depend on how we structure it. So, yes. So you can write that. I was going to say Marine Dynamics is sure to put up Marine Dynamics Academy.
There we go. Read your mind.
Yeah, the prospectus is there. It explains the projects in a bit more detail, and you can send your inquiries, and we can definitely look at that. Yeah, we have a lovely lodge where you stay. You're literally opposite the penguin sanctuary as well. So you do also spend some time there. Bearing in mind, I actually forgot to mention our penguin sanctuary is also a great tourist attraction because you can visit, and we actually have a feeding time at 3 p.m. We have a drop-down screen, so there's no disturbance of our birds. People can actually observe that and enjoy a coffee and cake, which is also helping our funding model. So bear that in mind. If you are coming to do shark cage diving or whale watching, stay another night and actually, experience it on a whole different level.
So got about 5 minutes left. Keep sending your questions in, but I've got another one before we get onto plastic. So if those are volunteer experiences for adults, you've got the DEEP program going now, which is fantastic, by the way. And if anyone didn't watch the little bit that they had today with Pinky telling a bit more about the DEEP program that they've got, is fantastic. Really check that out. Are you guys helping them? Now that you said you've seen 5 years since your first program, and you can start to see them going through high school and everything like that, is there something in line to help them with getting qualifications in the future in conservation and taking that one step further? Anything like that they can look forward to?
Okay, so what's really nice about that program, first of all, is they do, we're a small community, so we stay very close to our groups. Pinky is actually on the parents board at the school, at the high school. They have a marine science curriculum now, plus they have a marine sciences teacher that's there. Amazing. So we work with them. So sometimes we actually do more things with their students where we take them out, say, for estuary monitoring, or we assist them with transport for those groups as well. So we've been grooming those 2 groups that have already left, become part of our club now, the Deep Club. So they're not doing it on the same level now as the first 3 years, but we certainly keep them close. And we do, what's quite interesting, they've actually, a few of them have actually just been on a film shoot through partners of ours on a series called Roughing It Out, and they actually out on Wednesday. I think it's SABC2 in South Africa. And that was an opportunity that would never have come their way, which is so special because you never know where that might lead. We've also started like a guiding course as well. So yes, there are possibilities for them going forward. Our whole aim with this program is to ensure that they know that those possibilities are out there, to create hope for them, so that they can look in a different direction. Conservation, even some, doing fundraising or any kind of work within that conservation sphere, to encourage them to go that way. Having said that, when, the first thing we ask those kids is, what do they want to be? So some want to be a journalist, then, we can also help with that because we do that kind of work. Some want to be a doctor, then, we've bought that biology book for that kid. So you also want to encourage what their own passions are. We do photography. We do a bit of everything within that course for them. So absolutely, where we can assist, we will. But again, donors can also help support that. When they get to that age and we can identify a child going in the right direction who needs support, then they can absolutely help with something like that as well. I hope that answers that question.
There used to be a time where sort of conservation projects and community projects were sort of held on such a different level, and they were thought to be something that was completely 2 different things. But the overlap is becoming so apparent now, and how important it is to have conservation in the community and have that crossover and the importance of the different ecosystems and stuff like that. So, that DEEP program is amazing. Questions just come through from Chaz. Plan to come in September and go to Marine Dynamics, not looking hopeful. What's the updates on great white numbers around Mossel Bay, False Bay, Gans Bay? Is that something you can answer?
Yes, I can. Okay, so I know False Bay has been struggling, and like I said, they operate in those winter months. Mossel Bay, some of our team is actually right there now doing a film shoot. Very exciting. And the numbers are actually looking quite good. So the numbers are there in Mossel Bay at the moment. Again, bearing in mind, the film crew knows that because they're out there. The difficulty right now is we're not on sea. There have been reports. We've had some white sharks just around the corner in Gans Bay. So they are around. We just don't know exactly because we're not on sea at the moment. But yes, I know there's some in Mossel Bay at the moment. Also, just in terms of, I'm really, really optimistic that maybe, just maybe, we open by September, but I'm not sure. Otherwise, so we'll see. We obviously also then go into whale season. So absolutely, let's hope things change and the world gets a little brighter, that we can start traveling again. We have got all our COVID protocols in place already. We've been working on quite an extensive document. So some of our operations, as in terms of our base, operates as a restaurant. So they are doing some work. We are already doing all the cleaning, all the sanitizing, temperature testing, everything that's been has to be put in place has been put in place. So really, we'll have fewer numbers on the boat, for example, going forward, starting. So there will be some changes, and we'll absolutely accommodate the situation as it stands. So we are just waiting. We're hoping that maybe by level 2 we can. But again, it's level 2 in South Africa when we can start operating. But ultimately, it will depend a lot on the borders being open, for travel to South Africa. So let's all just cross cross fingers here on that one.
Sure. I mean, with regards to the COVID situation and everything, you guys have been so good in moving so much online and putting stuff out there, which I suppose you wouldn't have had as much time to do, running your normal sort of programs and everything, which is a kind of blessing in disguise, which a lot of us are facing, and which is fantastic. And you're now showing the Deep Blue sort of programs and everything, starting to do some of that online, which is amazing. So I think that combination of the factors that you're trying to cope with, but also trying to still give people access to it as much as possible, has been amazing.
It's been very special for us too. And I think the relationships and that a little bit of extra reach that we get, because obviously I assume, once we can get back out on sea, and we'll do some virtual tours, and we will implement that as well. For those who can't, I think that will also benefit the, people who actually struggle to travel. We do have full-on wheelchair access and that at our facility, and we can take wheelchairs on our vessel and all of that. But for those who maybe struggle, it would be really interesting for them to maybe observe a virtual tour. And that. So there's a lot of things we're still exploring. Watch this space. And again, it will all depend, because, if things turn around and we can start going out, and we can start getting travelers, we'll probably get busy again eventually. Certainly put it on your bucket list, So really, really important. And our team is also very anxious to get back out on the sea and working. We miss the action. So,
with regards to the plastic projects, just very quickly, is everything we hear about plastic in the oceans, fish and marine life, consuming the plastic, is that all as true as what we keep seeing? Are you seeing times when a shark's stomach could be opened up and you're seeing lots of plastic in it, for example, and stuff like that? Are all those kind of stuff true?
So we see, obviously, we do a lot of necropsies on animals. I can't say we've seen in sharks so much, although we've seen fishing stuff in sharks, so that could have caused its death, we're not sure. But fishing tackle, for example, so we have seen that penguin we dissected had cellophane in it, which causes ulcerations. So we definitely see it. In terms of whales, it's quite difficult. That would be the one that I really would like answered more as well. But they're obviously it's a very big species, much more difficult to work with. It's very expensive. We don't necessarily have all the tools available to do so. So not just us, we work obviously with the Mammal Research Institute, but there are limitations in terms of dissecting a big whale. So often that doesn't happen. So there might be some unanswered questions there completely. Remember, we've seen nurdle spills across the world, those tiny, tiny little plastic pellets. We had a big spill in Durban nearly almost 2 years ago, and that stuff is washing up all over the beach. You can hardly see it because it looks like the sand, so that stuff is quite terrible. So I'm not sure what impact that's having that we're not even seeing. And it's really hard to take that stuff out of the equation. There's a lot of issues around that. Absolutely, the plastic problem. I mean, that was one net from our town. So it's absolutely terrible. And remember, when you live on the sea, so I read this earlier today, that 60% of the world lives within 100 kilometers of the ocean. So that's really, really important in terms of how we treat the ocean. Don't assume because you're not living right on that coastline that you are not having an impact. The stuff that is coming down in our rivers, especially in South Africa, the stuff that we're seeing from rivers, we're in quite a windy place, trash is blowing around all the time as well. So it's a real problem here. I get quite upset about marine pollution. And what's really interesting, Rogers, I can do a whole talk on marine pollution, but it's always interesting. People actually do want to talk about it. They do want to talk. You think, people are tired of it, but people want to help. They want to find solutions. They want to make a difference. So I think it is a really important topic as well.
Oh, Brenda, I could talk to you for hours and finding this so fascinating. So we're going to have to do this again. To finish it off, is there anything particular around donations or any way that someone could get involved because they can't travel as much now?
I've just seen Chaz there wrote, keeping your website updated with current information and facts. We do have a daily blog on Marine Dynamics website, so marinedynamics.co.za you can go to. There is a daily blog. You can see, past months, everything's there in terms of what our sightings are like. We have a lot going on our social media, so please keep updated there. Absolutely, the biggest problem with us not being on sea, most of our conservation work has been reliant on our tourists. So absolutely, really, really important. If people can help support us in any way, go to dict.org.za. You can buy a penguin home. You can, sponsor a brick on our wall. We call it Rebuilding the Population. You can have your name up at apps as part of our legacy. You can really, you can adopt a shark. You can just pay for any bit of shark research. You can help the deep kids. You can really, really commit to any part of our projects. And the other thing you can do is actually run your own fundraising campaign. We have the way you can do that on our website as well. So if you're having a birthday or something coming up, by all means, think of us and raise some money towards the projects, because that's how we do the work. Just to note also something I didn't really explain properly, but that whole tourism operational platform. So many of us are paid by Marine Dynamics, Dyer Cruises, but we are part of the conservation work. So we really keep our trust spend minimal because everybody else is helping. So in times like this, we've also had to reduce our team at the moment. It's really, really a challenge, and we're still continuing with as much work as possible. The Penguin Sanctuary team has been there throughout COVID, looking after the birds. We've done rescues, releases throughout this time. So yeah, any support is obviously of huge value to us. But mostly, thank you for letting us have this platform to share, and thank you for creating this, Roger. It was really special. I love the way you've done this, and yeah, it's really special to us to be able to be part of your story as well. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, and no, the pleasure's all mine. Like honestly, just so happy that you managed to join, and it's been super interesting. So thank you so much, and we're definitely going to do it again. We'll do a follow up, and I think we need to dedicate one just on plastic, and maybe spend a bit more time on penguins as well. We're always talking about sharks, aren't we? But that'd be great. But
I'd love to bring the team from the Penguin Sanctuary. Maybe we can do a shoot from there sometime.
Definitely. That'd be amazing. Brenda, thank you so much. Once again, just to reiterate what Brenda's been saying, just go and check out their details, pop into our website as well. We're also listed on there. There's plenty of ways that you can get involved. Getting some comments coming through now saying, please do a follow-up. So I'm afraid, I think you're tied in, Brenda. I think you're gonna have to do a follow-up with us. But I think that's us. I mean, that's an hour and 10 minutes that have flown by because it's so interesting. Thank you so much. And we will see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody watching. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
At our very first lesson in July 2009, we had 12 kids and 12 dogs arrive. Within 6 weeks, it had grown to 60. And that's when we realized that we were onto something. And today we average 80 to 100 children every Friday afternoon. Over the course of a year, we probably are seeing about 270 kids enter the program.